The first thing we're going to be taking a look at is our actual sky and editing the color, haze and fog, and things like that. Of course, our decay amounts and whatever else is available within our sky, fog, and haze tab, because it can be very important. So let's go up to our atmosphere editor. And what I want to do is double click on our main camera view just to pull that up full screen. And I want to move our camera up just so we're looking at the sky and bring our focal down so we can view a little bit more of the sky. It's more like having a wide angle lens, and that way we can make our edits accordingly for an overall view and not just for a smaller amount. And even though when we're rendering we'll only be seeing maybe just a small square of this overall view, we can see our overall main effect of just sky color, because right now we're not too worried about where the cloud placements is going to be, and clouds are one of the main things that will distract you when you're zoomed out farther. So we're going to click on the Sky, Fog, and Haze tab, and we want to make sure that we're using the spectral model because that's what we're going to be focusing on. And we're going to take a look at our first tab. We have our Sky tab, which gives us two major effects, our sky color and our decay color. Now these by default create a very good looking sky. If you want to create something realistic and just that basic blue, adjusting your sun within this sky will actually give you very realistic looking results. And even messing with this decay color just a little can sometimes throw off your scene quite a bit. So we'll take a look at our decay color and edit that, and we can see what it's doing overall. And we'll pick a color that's really going to show up. We use some red, and that way we can see exactly what that decay is affecting. We have our basic sky color, which is our blue on top, and then our decay, which is more of that sort of reddish color, pinkish color on the bottom. Now we can adjust these two colors almost exactly the same, where we have our density and our altitude. So in other words, how much of this color are we going to see, how much saturation and brightness, contrast, and that's all sort of worked into our overall density of that color. The more we bring it down, the darker and more gray the scene is going to get. So we want to boost that up all the way to about 100%, maybe 98. And then we're going to look at our altitude. If we decrease our altitude, what it's going to do is decrease how high this color climbs into the sky before it starts fading to black. So we want to make sure that our main sky color, if we want to have a realistic looking sky, or a sky where the sky color, the blue in this case, is your main color, then you want to make sure that your altitude is higher than your decay. And that's usually what you want to do anyway, because the decay is giving us that nice extra color along the horizon. Now we can adjust our decay amount underneath that, and go ahead and increase that up to 100%. I'm going to go ahead and drag this out a little bit larger. And we can see a much more bright purple in our sky. And as we decrease that, we see that fade out to more of a white, where we can see the bottom of our sky and the horizon. And we'll go ahead and just increase that a little. And then we have the same for our decays we have as the sky, where we have our altitude. So we can adjust how high that purple color is going to climb into our sky. We can go all the way up to 10 kilometers. We could even go over if we type in manual amounts. And I'm going to edit this color to something a little bit different, maybe something green. And we can see how much that really changes our entire scene. We decrease that amount, it won't give us as much of a change. But in this case, it doesn't, of course, look right. And one of the best colors that does look right is actually the default. And sticking with the default is not a bad thing, and it's not cheating, as far as I'm concerned, because it is probably one of the best colors, and it is a little difficult to get back to that. And we'll notice that we have some very drastic changes between certain colors. So I can go ahead and adjust this. We have more of a yellow right now. We'll bring that to more of that orange color, and we can see a huge change. And if we go ahead and just adjust that a little bit to the right, we'll notice it changes quite a bit that way as much too. Another thing is, it's not just adding to the color, it's reducing, it's decaying. So just because we have this specific color as our decay doesn't mean it's going to show up that way once it starts blending with our sky color. And now if we come down to our fog and haze section of our tab, we'll notice that we have pretty much a good way to think of it as another layer of color editing. So in other words, these aren't going to subtract any color. They're going to pretty much just add on to whatever we have. so we can adjust our haze and its overall density. We can see the sky starts to get more of this grayish color. And of course we could change that to any color we want and just adjust its overall, pretty much its opacity and its density with this slider. And we have the same thing with the altitude. We can adjust how high our haze climbs into the sky. And if we don't have at least a little bit of haze, we end up with a very unrealistic looking horizon where it's possibly too bright, depending on where the sun is at in the sky. So definitely one thing you want to keep in mind. Our fog ground density is currently set to 0, and by default we have no fog in our scene. If we go ahead and increase that density, we can see the overall fog in our scene start to increase, and we also see some scattering of light caused by that, as it actually would in real life. We can also adjust our overall height of our fog and its altitude, and we get some very interesting looking effects. And I'm just going to go ahead now and grab our sunlight, and we want to see that in the scene. And we can take a look at some of the different effects that cause the sun to look a little more realistic. So let's go back to our atmosphere editor. And now we have a very interesting looking sky right now. Our sun is just a little tiny orb. But as we start to reduce our fog, we'll see that starting to brighten up a little tiny bit. And mostly the area around it. We'll decrease our haze. But we also have a glow intensity, which is part of our fog and haze, and it's all sort of tied together. And if we increase our glow intensity, we start to increase the light reflecting within our haze and our fog, and we get a very nice, large sort of orb in the sky, a nice faint glow. And of course, the more we increase that value, the bigger that's going to get, and eventually wash out the scene. But underneath that, we can scatter it, and the more we increase our scattering, the more you'll see that light sort of attract itself to the sun. So that way we can adjust our glow intensity a little bit higher and adjust that fall off between the glow of the sky and the glow of our actual fog. And then underneath all of that, we have our global settings. And now currently our aerial perspective is set to 10. Since our camera is pretty much as close to the ground plane as it's going to get, we don't really see what is happening with aerial perspective. So what I want to do is move our camera up a little bit higher into the sky, almost as if we were in the clouds, so we can understand a little bit more about what actually that tool does. So let's go ahead and just raise our camera up, and we can see immediately that we have our sky turning to black. We'll rotate it up just a little. And the reason for that is our aerial perspective is sort of a representation of altitude in our atmosphere. So we can adjust how high our atmosphere in our scene climbs. And right now it's set to the highest amount. We can of course even set that higher. I could set that to 20, and now we see a very, very black sky with that sharp line for our horizon, even though we start to have a little bit of bending because we're so high up. But if I reduce this down to 5 now, it's going to look like we're a little bit more into the atmosphere. I can set that down to 2, even more further down, and then 0, of course. It's going to look like we're pretty much right on the ground, or maybe just a little bit higher because we have that glow in there. If we change that up to a higher amount, then we can actually look like we're going into space. So that's one thing to keep in mind. If you're going to be doing stills, you can of course just set this to whatever it is that looks right. But if you're going to do animation where the cloud is going to be moving up and down and ascending and descending in altitude, then you want to make sure you have your perspective set to an amount where you're not going to be leaving the Earth's atmosphere or your scene's atmosphere. Or if you want to make sure that your aerial perspective is set to the amount where you'll create a realistic looking effect and a nice glow. Even at 10 right now, it starts to look pretty fake because it's still too bright. And although it would be bright with the sun right there, we should be able to see a little bit more around in that area. So we can turn that down, and we start to see that climb up a little bit more. But there's also other things to keep in mind while we're doing this. We can decrease our glow amount, which shows us a little more variation right here. If we had a texture on our ground plane, something like fields, we'd be able to see that, or we could do continents, and you could do some really, really neat, realistic looking atmospheric or high altitude effects. What we also have is our guide rays and our volumetric light, and we're going to be taking a look at that in a different chapter because it requires a little bit more explanation than the rest of these tools. And we're going to look at just our last one right now, which is our quality boost. And what this allows us to do is just render a higher quality sky. If you want the best quality, set it to 4, which is the highest. Of course, we can go a little bit higher than that if we want, but it will increase our render times significantly the higher we change that. So that's definitely something to keep in mind, that you have to sort of play back and forth between your render quality and your quality boosts and things like that within the atmosphere editor, so you're getting the best quality effect. We're just going to switch over to Light tab really quick. We also have a couple other things we can do in here, which is our global lighting adjustment, and also we want to take a look at our sky dome lighting gain and artificial ambience. I'm going to change our aerial perspective down lower, so it's more like we're back on the ground. We don't have to move our camera. But what we can do is adjust our light intensity and make the scene overall brighter or darker. And it's sort of an exposure if you think of it as you're working with an actual camera, so we can sort of adjust the whole scene's exposure. And up here what we have is our sky dome lighting gain, and what we do is increase that, and that will increase the amount of light that's being shown on the objects in the scene and everything that's not part of the sky and the atmosphere. So in other words, in this case, the ground plane. And if we increase our artificial ambience, that will increase our ambience that we have on our objects, which we don't have any in the scene right now, so you can't really see that. But what it'll do is create that sort of faked radiosity light that we have on the back of objects, and we can either increase that or decrease that. We can also adjust the overall sky color. And this is one thing you want to keep in mind when you're going back and forth between your sky color and your overall sky color, because you can make some dramatic changes to your scene with just changing the overall sky color, and can sometimes overwrite some of the other settings you had. Let me go ahead and put it with a little bit of green, and now we notice mostly green on our objects in the scene and not really any changes in the sky at all. So that of course goes in hand with our sky dome lighting gain, and this is very good to use in case you have a very bright sky or very dark sky and it doesn't quite match the ground. This way you can go up and down with these different tools and sort of balance that out so it's a little more realistic. Because in real life, if we were to actually film the sky with the rest of the scene, the sky would appear mostly as a white and washed out because it's going to be a lot brighter. And we also have our light color and ambient color that are part of these, and these can also make a dramatic effect in the way our scene looks. As you see, I brought down our ambient light color and that darkened our scene quite a bit, and since it's a little more of a turquoise greenish sort of color, we can sort of pick up a hint of that on the ground plane. And same thing with our light color. If we do that different kind of color for that, we'll notice a little bit of a change. And what we can also do is adjust our light color. So we're going to go to our light tab, or our sunlight, and we want to make sure this top tab is selected, and we're going to edit our color, and let's just go to a little bit of a yellow and click OK. And we now just notice the whole scene is pretty much that yellow color. So the sunlight's color does also play a role in the overall creation of your sky and what color you want to create with it. You can create sort of a lighter color, and we just get a hint of it. If you really want something dramatic, then of course use a much darker color, and then we get a very, very red sky in this case, since we're using red. We could of course do that with blue as well. And this way we could create sort of a faked ocean effect for an underwater scene that's volumetric. And then we could do any of these other colors as well. But using a brighter color is a lot more realistic. If we can go with sort of a yellow tint, and that way we can end up with something that looks a little bit better. We can also select on the bottom where we would like to apply the majority of these settings, whether or not we want to apply them to all the lights or just the sunlight, and then whether or not we want to affect the sky and the clouds with these settings as well. We're also going to take a look. We see we have global ambience right now. For the most part, changing these settings isn't really going to make that huge of a difference as far as your sky goes. as long as it's not so much standard. These apply mainly to the actual objects in the scene and really have nothing to do with the sky. Although we can use the color from the sky and retrieve that a little bit better with some of these effects, and the more we increase it. But overall, these settings will not make that huge of a difference while you're making your edits. So you don't have to worry about throwing anything off if you decide to increase your radiosity in your scene. You don't have to worry about that interrupting what you've spent your time on creating for a sky. We also have another quality boost, which is going to adjust the quality of these settings within our scene. So pretty much the objects and not the sky. So we can adjust that to something a little bit better, and we're not really going to see any changes in our sky, just on our ground plane.